Well, the president is back in town. We saw the news. He was, he was in Tanzania, I believe, as a lot of other government agencies and officials were. And it's about Mission 300 Energy Summit. It's a strategic vision that by 2030, we would have brought electricity to rural areas for 600 Africans. That's quite an ambitious figure, but then that's why they were in Tanzania, to strategize about it and find out what the ways and means were to arriving at this particular objective. It seems clear that finance is going to be a good part of it, and what we're lucky that we have with us today, Malam Abba Aliyu. Malam Abba Aliyu is the MD of Rural Electrification Agency, REA. A fine morning to you, Malam Abba.
Good morning to you too. Thank you for having me.
Indeed. Were you with the president? Were you over there in Tanzania together?
Yes. I was in Tanzania.
Okay. So welcome back home. Welcome back home. Here we are now. It's a big deal because if by first of all, we know that we're looking to see what we can do by way of providing electricity to our people. That is, when I say our people, I mean Africans. By 2030, if we can get 600 million, is it rural homes? When you say getting, when we talk about getting electricity to 600 Africans, what are we talking about there? Is that 600 families or 600 people?
Yeah, so the target is 600 million, not just 600, but 600 million.
I'm so sorry. Yes, you're very, very right. Correct. Exactly. 600 million.
Yes. People. And it's not just the rural areas, it's total, both those that are in urban areas, peri-urban and rural areas. So it's just, in a nutshell, it's just achieving 100% electricity access. And the question also that has been discussed here in Tanzania during the meeting is what even electricity access means. Does that mean just, for example, providing illumination, or is it providing sustainable, reliable, affordable electricity? And the consensus was that providing this access, it's not just illuminating the communities, but making sure that we provide sustainable electricity, clean electricity, and electricity that is reliable and at the same time affordable. So there is much to just creating access, but what kind of access should be provided? And that is part of the entire discussion at this Mission 300 event that took place in Tanzania.
Well, it's interesting when you put it like that, because a lot of Nigerians listening to this, sustainable electricity, clean electricity, reliable electricity, affordable electricity. Now, a lot of Nigerians will probably have an input into the matter of affordable electricity. As you know, you're coming back from Tanzania. I'm sure you'd have, even before you went, you would have known what the lie of the ground is financially over there. What Tanzanians are paying on electricity. But as you know, Nigerians, they are complaining. Yeah, there's no other way to put it. They are complaining on the affordability of electricity, seeing as electricity is indispensable. So it seems like almost like whatever the price, people will have to pay for it. But from all commentary we've heard, our people would have wished that it was more affordable than it actually is. So now when I heard you talk about affordability, I said, aha, you people in governance, you are aware of this crucial matter of affordability. If it's going to be affordable, I don't know, tell me how practical that is. You know how people say, the tasty stew, a lot of ingredients went into it, and therefore that pot is going to be costing more than anyhow pot of stew. How are we going to arrive there? I understand that the World Bank and co are contributing finances to this, but talk to us on that objective of providing, apart from sustainable, clean, reliable, but also affordable electricity to the people.
Yeah, so the most important fact first is that any electricity infrastructure that is to be provided must have a viable commercial framework attached to it. Otherwise, that infrastructure or that framework may not work. Reason being that for the sustainability of whatever intervention, if I come, for example, and establish a mini grid within a community to provide that community with electricity, if there is no kind of commercial framework whereby that private sector can charge tariff to sustain that infrastructure, then there's the high possibility that that infrastructure provided within that community may not sustain. So that is the first aspect that was very clear. And this has a direct relationship with the affordability. The second also aspect that is also very clear is the need for the private sector to be significant party in addressing the electricity access challenge. Government alone cannot address the electricity access. If you look at the numbers that came out from the Mission 300, we're talking about close to 40 billion US dollars to address this electricity access within the continent. So in particular, look at what Nigeria required to address that. Government cannot provide that. And that is why the multilateral and bilateral institution, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and the private sector that are in the business of providing electricity, addressing the electricity access, all came together under the Mission 300 to commit funding to say that, okay, we are committing this to help address that. And by that means that the private sector most of their intervention is going to be a project finance intervention. And as a private sector, if I intervene and I provide electricity, I have to have a line sight of how would the tariff recover my costs and also pay for debt and equity that I injected to provide that infrastructure which will address the electricity access challenge. So all these are contextual things that we need to factor into it to define that affordability. And that is why, for example, if you look at what the federal government of Nigeria is doing under the off-grid, under the leadership of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is providing capital grant and subsidy to help reduce the tariff cost. If you go to off-grid,
I thought subsidy was almost like a dirty word in Nigeria now.
No, so for the off-grid sector, these are the people that are not enjoying any subsidy. So they are not part of the on-grid. You are on-grid, you are enjoying subsidy that needs to be eliminated. But there are over 40 million Nigerians that are not even part of the grid. So this subsidy that the people that are on grid are enjoying, which needs to be removed for the tariff to be cost reflective, are not even benefiting in any way on this kind of intervention. And that is why the wisdom now is that for these people that are not connected, let's provide them with this distributed renewable energy infrastructure and incentivize the private sector by de-risking the sector for the private sector to go to this community and provide them with this electricity. The wisdom is that for private sector, they are driven by economic value they will get from their investment. So they may not go to these rural communities to deploy this infrastructure. So the federal government now has to devise a means to say that, okay, go to these rural communities, we as the government, we would de-risk it in such a way that even if you go, we would create some viability for you to get some economic value of your investment. And that is what the federal government is doing, working with the World Bank. It's not a new news that the federal government had crystallized the funding of $750 million, which we are using to de-risk this off-grid sector for the private sector to address the electricity access in rural areas. Already, the implementation of this had already started. The Rural Electrification Agency had already started working on deploying 40 interconnected mini grids across the country as a starting point. And already there are a number of mini grids that we crystallize very soon. In the next 2 weeks, we will start commissioning. At this moment, we have over 60 completed mini grids that we will start commissioning them. Our target is to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians, 3 million of them using the isolated mini grids, and about 1.5 million of Nigerians using the interconnected mini grids, and about 12 million using mesh grid and standalone home system, including productive use of equipment.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Malam Abba. We're talking about Nigeria now, but it was a larger field that the Tanzanian conference was addressing. It's Africa as a whole. And look, it's a courageous agenda, because I don't know, people cite us anywhere from 120 to more million, and we're looking to provide electricity to 300 million people in Africa. It's very important to us, that is, this whole electrification issue. It's very important to us. But as you were there over in Tanzania, are there other countries that are a bit in Nigeria's boat, so to speak, where, you know, things arguably are getting better? A lot depends on where you live, but I think since President Tinubu's administration, things have got better, but people have gotten used to the idea now of paying for what you consume, as opposed to it being subsidized. So I guess my question to you is that, by way of comparison, Nigeria, we by and large, and thank you very much for the wealth of detail that you just provided, we know what the issues are and where work still needs to be done. But could you compare, since this was not a Nigerian summit, it also concerns our brothers and sisters in the African continent. Which other countries came to light as having this kind of a situation?
So thank you. It's only when we come to this kind of event that we appreciate the effort that the present government is doing towards addressing the electricity challenge. Typical, for example, if I will share with you, one of the outcome of this summit is the need, the push by other African countries for Nigeria to create a learning center in Nigeria for other African countries to come to Nigeria and learn how did Nigeria create a framework to electrify 8 million Nigerians and deploy over 180 mini grids, deploy over 1 million solar home system. Within Nigeria, we're feeling that we still have a lot to do. But when we share this number and other African countries get to know what we have done, they really feel that, oh, we need to come and learn what exactly it is. The Nigerian Distributed Access Through Renewable Energy Scale-Up Project, which is one of the biggest public sector funded project approved by Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, it's a model for the entire African countries. And Nigeria has been quite ahead of the curve. Okay. The one of the main projects that in this Mission 300 that is being talked about as the beginning of as the main project model that all others should copy and start implementing for the achievement of the target of the Mission 300 is the DES project, which we have already approved, and we have started implementation of that. We are even going beyond that. If you see the press release from the Mr. President media team, you will see that there is already additional discussion with African Development Bank under their program called Desert to Power for additional funding to address the remaining Nigerians that are without this. I personally would have without doubt that before the end of this dispensation, we would definitely deliver get many Nigerians out of this electricity poverty and give them reliable and sustainable access in this country. And that is why many other African countries are looking at it. And lastly is to also see the numbers. You know, the country, Nigeria as a country, has over 200 million people. The target, the one project under this government is targeting to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians. And that is almost the population of some African countries. So you can see how daring and how audacious this government is in addressing the electricity challenge facing the country. And that is the commitment of the president's government and the support we are getting from Honorable Minister of Power to address this challenge in the country.
Okay, before we go further, because thank you very much, by the way, a number of clarifications I would also be seeking. As we are speaking, maybe we'll, we should take a report. We had a package report. You referred to something similar earlier just now. So let's take that report. And,
despite ongoing efforts, more than half of Africa's population remains without electricity. But this may soon change if African leaders follow through with the compact they have signed to deliver electricity to the deprived population. The Africa Development Bank is leading this charge and carrying along other development partners to finance this idea into action to accelerate the energy access.
We were joined by the African Union, Commission, several global partners, including the Rockefeller Foundation, the Sustainable Energy for All of the United Nations, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet.
This progress means that more boys and girls in remote areas can now study in well-lit classrooms. Health workers can deliver life-saving services to off-grid populations.
For Tanzania, the host country, President Samia Hassan announced a $13 billion funding requirement to implement key energy reforms that will boost the electricity supply chain, promote clean cooking solutions, and expand access to power in rural communities.
In order to overcome hurdles impeding energy access, we need to take bold actions by increasing investment and financing for infrastructure development.
President Bola Tinubu's participation also projected Nigeria's electrification strategy and implementation plan.
The Distributed Access to Renewable Energy Scale-Up project is the landmark or the model that the Africa Energy Summit are using, which Nigeria, even before the summit, had already signed, and we have started implementation of that project.
The lack of renewable energy solutions affects more than 1 billion people on the continent, disproportionately impacting women and children. Initiatives like the Mission 300 and Desert to Power, which also targets providing 10 gigawatts of solar to 250 million people by 2030, will significantly close the electricity access gap.
At the Mission 300 Africa Energy Summit, memorandums of understanding have been signed, commitments made, and financing options provided. What remains is execution and strategic action, as hope rises for more than 300 million waiting to get access to electricity that will power growth. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Okay, that's our Femi Akonde. The report went out earlier. And look, here we are in 2025. The projection, the objective that we set is 2030, by 2030. Now, you just explained how 17.5 million Nigerians will be our target. So I was going to ask you that 2025, and we are looking to achieve this mammoth goal. Well, by the way, Nigeria, as you know, I think is the largest country, is it not, by our population. So one has to put that in context, that, yep, whereas there's much that has been done by this administration that is commendable, but we are the largest. So I suppose they would expect big numbers from Nigeria. But between now and 2030, how optimistic are you that we can achieve that goal? Femi Akonde was talking there towards the end of his report that he feels it's a matter of strategy and vision. How optimistic are you, considering that there's so much confronting African governments, including ours, Nigeria, that is crying out for resources, and these resources are not cheap. Thank God for the Rockefellers, foundations of this world, the AU commissions. Speak to me about the doability of this in 5 years.
That we would achieve this target. If you get to know the quantum of work and different initiatives being undertaken by this government towards addressing this electricity access gap. Like I told you earlier, one just need to see the audacity being taken by this government to address the challenge. If you look at it before, we tend to scratch the surface. We know we have electricity access gap, but what should we do? What have we? This government came to say, let's face the challenge heads on. Let's take this 17.5 million Nigeria and get them electrified. As we have finished in starting this implementation of this electrify this 17.5 million, already another project it's underway to address the remaining Nigerians that are without this access. That is one. Two, as we are also doing this, there is a project being undertaken by the Honorable Minister of Power, the Nigerian Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, which is mapping the entire country, saying that, okay, so where are these so-called unelectrified Nigerians? Where are those that are without unreliable access, and where are the Nigerians that have this electricity? This data would help catalyze investment into the sector, because as a financier, if I see a data that shows me that, okay, this is where the Nigerians that are without this access, or this is where there are that do not have reliability, I will be confident enough to say that, okay, it means I can put out my money to address, to electrify these people and be able to get some economic value out of it. So that is another initiative being done, mapping this country and identifying where this Nigerians without access and to what quantum it's required to address them. That is one. Secondly, if you look also analyze the budget proposal that Mr. President presented to the National Assembly under the Rural Electrification Project Agency, there is a budget proposal of about 100 billion naira under an initiative, Mr. President initiative called the National Public Sector Solarization Initiative, an initiative to provide to solarize the entire public institution across the country, to eliminate the diesel cost that tends to be very high in our public institution. So there's another drive also being done to solarize this public institution across the country. And as we are implementing this, the federal government is also very conscious of how do we also ensure we catalyze local manufacturing in country, so that we even reduce the time frame it takes to do this project development. So there is also additional initiative of catalyzing local manufacturing. And it may interest you to know that as at now, there are a number of Nigerian companies that have established a PV panel assembly plant here in Nigeria. There's a company called GRV that just established 250 megawatt PV panels manufacturing capacity in the country. There's another one in Lagos that has 100 megawatt PV panels assembly plant in the country. And REA, Nasini, and the Federal Ministry of Power are in discussion with a potential Chinese company that will establish a lithium battery assembly plant in Lagos. So we are also working on catalyzing this manufacturing and assembly out companies within the country to reduce the time frame of project development and to also make sure that we use this initiative to enhance the gross domestic product of the country. So that is another thing that is being done. Then the last one is the financing. One of the landmark of Mr. President's trip to Tanzania is witnessing the signing of funding to 4 of the renewable energy service companies operating in Nigeria. A whopping total cost of $70 million was provided by International Finance Corporation to these 4 local companies as a debt financing for them to go and continue to electrify Nigeria. The target within that financing is about 400,000 Nigerians to be provided with this reliable, clean, and sustainable electricity. So you can see from both ends, we're working on catalyzing the investment, providing financing, catalyzing local manufacturing, provide de-risking the sector. So the president is addressing this challenge from all different ramifications, and at the same time making sure that as we're addressing this challenge, the country also is building on its own capacity, local manufacturing, creating jobs, and enhancing its GDP.
Indeed. Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Abba Aliyu. In case you've just joined us, our guest is the MD of Rural Electrification Agency, Nigeria. We'll take a quick break. Text of this conference, Mission 300 Energy Summit. We're thinking in terms of the whole country, just as it is also being done in other African countries that were together at the summit. And well, I was particularly chuffed that in Nigeria, we tend to be a bit critical of what's going on because we want things to have happened yesterday and we're always complaining. But only to arrive at a community like that, the summit like that, to find out that people were even saying, what, you Nigerians, you've gone this far? Perhaps we need to come and see how you have done what you have done, which seems to suggest to me that they also have their own need. But Madam Abba, you were speaking there and were talking about the private sector aspect to all of this. Government can't do these kind of things alone. You always need the private sector. And the private sector is not going to be interested unless they can see a fair return coming back. Private sector will tell you that they're not set up for charity. We understand that. So I wanted to ask you, and especially when you talked about certain manufacturing, the new direction, which I'm happy that you talked about batteries to store power. The new wave, as you know, it's still expensive, but you have LiFePO4, lithium ion phosphate batteries. That seems to be the new wave of things going on. I wonder, could you speak to us a bit more about the supporting industries that will, number one, help us out in Nigeria and perhaps could go, beyond Nigeria? I brought the lithium iron phosphate batteries into the conversation because lithium, they say it is in Africa here that we have all those things that those people, that other people need abroad. And here we are in Africa, so I imagine that there are deals to be made. But, you would know better. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, so you see, when it comes to manufacturing, countries need to look into their strategic advantage. So I give you an example. The PV panels manufacturing in the world, 95% of
photovoltaic, right?
Yes, photovoltaic panels.
Yes.
The 95% of the total manufacturing in the entire world is in China, right? So to just come out in a day to say that, oh, you want Nigeria wants to start competing with China would be a big order. But what we did was to look at if our RESCOs, the Renewable Energy Service Company, require close to 1 gigawatt of PV panels capacity to be able to address this electricity access. And most of these have to be imported from China. Mm-hmm. And there's also a time lag. So if you import, you will have to wait as a private sector between 3 to 6 months before these PV panels reach Nigeria. And as a business man, in any private sector that is in the business of addressing electricity access, the critical success factor based on our project design is efficiency. So it's the ability of the private sector to quickly deploy that infrastructure, secure grant, and go back and to another community and do it. So that efficiency of quickly deploying from one community to another is a success factor. So what we said is, let us do economic analysis of establishing this PV panels manufacturing in Nigeria compared to waiting for like between 3 to 6 months for your panels to come from China, even if, for example, they will come cheaper. But that's a time lag. If you attach economic value to it, you will now realize that there is loss of economic value. So even if we establish this manufacturing in Nigeria, even if the price will be higher, but the fact that you will just in 7 days you can get your panels to your location within the country compared to 6 months, then you have saved some costing. And that is why we encourage the Nigerian private sector to say that, okay, even if you cannot compete in pricing with the China, but you can compete in terms of efficiency and delivery period. So establish this panel, and the private sector would see the value of buying, even if it is more expensive panels in Nigeria compared to waiting to import panels in China. So, and that makes sense. So that is where we believe the country has strategic value in country. Okay. And the same thing with the lithium battery is the efficiency of quickly buying and getting it rather than spending time to import it. That gives a strategic advantage to the country.
Indeed. Well, especially with the new fangled lithium iron phosphate batteries, the new generation of batteries that are totally different from the batteries that we used to use before. Because one sees, just looking at advertisements, that a lot of businessmen are actually bringing in these batteries. They are by no means as affordable as one would like. They are not affordable at all. But it is a new direction. And you've been talking about PV panels, yes, which is probably commonly known in the market as solar panels. But it's the same thing that you're talking about. And I was just wondering that, okay, there's this new idea about store the power that you will need. We're just looking at all the options. We just want to improve it. And but the private sector has to do its own bit. And have you noticed that there are the advertisements, commercial advertisements do show that Nigerian businessmen are bringing in well, power stations is what they are called now. I emphasized before talking about this that they're not necessarily most affordable, but they have a range. These things have a range. Are these important aspects of this challenge where a person cannot afford to buy the wherewithal, the equipment to store more than maybe something like what is it now, 2 kilohertz? of power.
Kilowatts.
Yeah, kilowatts. More than 2 kilowatts of power, let him buy that. There are even those that if you can not afford more than 500 kilowatts, instead of 2,000 kilowatts, let it be so. Is this an important part of this for those who can afford it, while government continues its own work about supplying the generality of the people by whatever other means are necessary?
Oh, absolutely. If you go back to what I said in terms of our target under the DES, distributed access through renewable energy scale-up, I mentioned that we categorize different categories of Nigeria to be provided with different electrification methodology. I mentioned that a number, about 3 million will be provided with isolated mini grids, 1.5 million using interconnected mini grids, and about 12 million using standalone system. And that is exactly the one you are looking at. And these are systems that if you go to a barbering salon, for example, you can put 150 kilowatts and that serve the entire need of that barber, or you go to a hairdresser,
that's right,
serve that. It even go down to the, for example, solar irrigation pumps. If you go to, yes.
No, okay. I'm sorry, sir, but it's a fine place to take our first caller, Mazi Okorafo, who has called in from Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning again. Now, you see, when we talk about this energy summit, actually, it is not a question of summit. At the end of the day, after the summit, the outcome of the report, we implement it. These are the policies. There's a lot of policies. So Africa don't need to continue discussing energy. We have what it takes. The wind alone in Africa, the Sahara desert, it's okay. The sunlight, okay. You come to Nigeria per se, the cold in Enugu State is being wasted. Nobody cares about it. And today we are talking about energy. What does it take? You see, we cannot be dependent on waiting for Sahel or Europe to get our own sources in terms of energy. But look at Ukraine, look at Russia, see, how they are exporting all this energy to Europe because they have excess. That is what the Nigerians are supposed to be doing. Even the sources, look at the sources. The father, at least I have my own son who has finished. The way he's making this solar, you don't even need to go to the link up with the electricity house of Nigeria. Because the way is, but what is the problem? The components, the parts of the electricity are the problem. So Nigerian or African countries, what they should discuss how to take the local materials of these solar panels we need, instead of depending on Europe. It will help us. Because the area we have our excess energy supply, the sky is our limit. As long as we continue depending everything, energy, air will depend, water will just to me. If you go to all the technological universities in this department of this energy, electricity, what are we doing? We don't go there collect the certificate without making it. Even Nigerian universities are not supposed to wait for the powerhouse. All the departments where they have all those electrical, the students themselves should be generating their own energy to use in their campuses. I was not when I saw one of the national, one of their children, that 80 days students with the 80 days no energy in the particular university, and then I stress out those departments where they have all those electrical, what were they supposed to do? Professor this, doctor this, master degree, first degree, what are first class this, what are they supposed to do? I time will sit down and get whatever we want. I'm so depending on you. That's what I thank my brother, the President Trump. I tell everybody, go back to your country and generate basis of your resources in your country. Good morning. That's so class of United. Good morning, sir. Good morning again.
Good morning. Thank you very much. That guest, that phone in, he actually touched on a number of subjects, fossil fuel among others. He spoke about coal. Maybe you want to talk about that. But before then, he has spoken about, will we follow through? It's all right, we go to all these events, Sometimes we are praised and we meet up with our peers, but will we follow through? From the way you've been talking and from what I saw, I would have said there is no option but to follow through, but then I really don't know very much about it. So how would you address Mazi's concern that, look, we've been hearing about all these grandiose ideas. To what extent will we follow through? We have experiences where they go, they talk, they come back, and they forget about everything.
I absolutely understand Mazi's concerns, where many instances we attend events and at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. But in this case, like I mentioned, the Nigerian case is different. Even before the Energy Summit, Mr. President has signed the Distributed Access Through Renewable Energy Scale-up. And this is out of the policy that has already been established to address energy gap in the country. So the project is implementation. As I mentioned also, already, even as at now, there are 40 interconnected mini-grid establishment or implementation process that had already started, even before the Mission 300. And when we came for the Mission 300, what is being talked about is how do we, other African countries, how do we replicate what Nigeria had already started? So this has gone beyond just creating policy or talking about policy, but actual implementation. And I like something that Mazi also mentioned in terms of using our universities, right? One of the things that Rural Electrification Agency is proud to say is, as at now, there are 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals that we've completely electrified. If you go to University of Abuja, you will see a 3 megawatts hybrid mini grid that is powering the entire university, including the staff quarters. This is deployed by the REA. The same thing, you go to University of Maiduguri, you will see a 12 megawatt that is powering the university, the teaching hospital, and potentially to even connect the water treatment plant powering the Maiduguri Metropolitan. That project is completed and it's there. You can go and see it. The same thing with University of Agriculture in Abeokuta. The same thing if you go to National Defense Academy, if you go to Federal University in Gashua, if you go to Alex Ikweme University in Abia, and if you go to Calabar, you will also see another 7 megawatt that is powering the University of Calabar and the teaching hospital. And as we completed this 7 university and 2 teaching hospitals, we have already started a new round of 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital. Port Harcourt, Nasarawa, Kogi, Imo, Federal University of Technology in Imo, Owerri, Yola, if you go to Yola. So what I'm trying to portray, I'm giving this as practical example to say that no more, it's not a question of speaking about policy or this, it's actual implementation. And that is what the minister charged us to go. And lastly, another important thing is in all these universities, we, apart from deploying this mini grid, we establish a world-class renewable training center in the university to make sure that we institutionalize this renewable energy knowledge hub within the university. Some universities have already created a curriculum, a BSc curriculum, and they would use this training center to give students an opportunity for them to learn practical way of deploying and managing this renewable infrastructure.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Very quickly, I wanted you to touch on coal, the fossil fuel that Mazi spoke about. Is there a place for coal in all of our projections?
So I think that question should go to the regulator. I'm not, my purview is off-grid, and within the off-grid, we are using renewable sources. We are looking at solar, we're looking at mini-grid, micro, small hydros. We are looking at wind, we are looking at biomass. So this is our own areas of operation, and we are all exploring all these areas. the Enugu, he mentioned the Enugu state, we are in discussion already with the state government, the establishments that has been established by the state governor for the electricity market in the state. We are in discussion with them various ways. We will soon even have a roundtable with the state government apparatus where we will show all the mini-grid opportunities within the Enugu state and bring this private sector that have funding of close over $2 billion for them to take all this site and deploy this mini-grid. We are doing a lot, but you see, because the challenge in the country is also huge, and that is why it's not being felt. But there are areas that you will go and they will tell you, oh, our experience is different. But definitely, Enugu State, it's also an area at state that REA will soon have the roundtable and will start massive deployment of our mini-grid in the state.
Well, I want to thank you. This is a fine place at which to leave it. Malam Abba Aliyu, just back from Tanzania, along with high government officials, including the president. So brighter days ahead. The objective is by 2030, and Mission 300 Energy Summit is the backdrop. One feels proud that other African countries are saying that we need to look seriously at what Nigeria is doing and see where we can quickly